All right, so Unit 4, Part A, or Lesson A, Part 2. All right, just a little reminder, as you're watching these videos, please turn off the TV, radio, headphones, iPads, iPods, Facebook, anything else that could possibly interfere with your learning as you're doing this. Because once again, as we're learning about factoring, we cannot afford to fall behind. All right, because each one of these things is going to build, and it's going to build fast. All right, so our objective for today is to learn how to factor a trinomial with a lead coefficient of 1. Okay, you learn trinomial. That term means that there's 1, 2, 3 separate pieces that make up an expression or equation. Okay, in earlier units, or in earlier sections of this unit, all right, we learned how to FOIL. Okay, where we said we're going to multiply the first, the outers, the inners, and the last. We should all be pros at this by now. What I want to do is point out a couple little things. First of all, this number right here, we get to through multiplication. We're multiplying those two numbers. All right. Our middle term, when we simplify, we get through either addition or subtraction based on the signs. All right. So in this case, it's addition. All right. And that's going to be important to factoring, to understand this idea that we're multiplying and adding to get somewhere. All right. So let's take a look at our first question. We're asked to factor. Okay. We have x squared plus 5x plus 14. All right. What we're going to do is we'll make a little chart we call an MA chart. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep in mind that the last number is achieved, we find it in multiplication, and the middle term we get through addition. So I'm going to write, I need to multiply to get to positive 14 and add to get to positive 15. Alright, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to list all the factors of 14. We're not going to do this all the time, but for the first one I think it's going to help you. Alright, so most people think 2 and 7. I want to point out that if you positive 2 and positive 7 will get you to positive 14, so will negative 2 and negative 7. You could also do positive 1 and positive 14, and negative 1 and negative 14. Now, which set of numbers is going to add together to get me 15? Well, this is going to be 9, not good. This is going to be negative 9, not good. This is positive 15, we have a winner. This is negative 15, and that's no good. Okay, your goal is to find these two numbers as fast as you can. Alright, the better you get at this, the more practice you get, the faster this is going to go, and it's going to make it so much easier. Okay, so there's a long way of doing this and a short way. You'll learn the long way when we do something called AC factoring. But right now, because we have a lead coefficient of 1, alright, I could use a shortcut which basically works like this. We're going to split up that x squared term because, again, the way we got that was we multiplied the first term, alright, to get that x squared. So I'm going to split it back up. Alright, and from there I'm going to take my two factors that work and put them in place. This is a factored trinomial now. Okay, so notice factoring is the opposite of distributing and FOILing. Alright, let's move on to B. This time our 14 is negative. Remember, we got that 14 through multiplication. Whoops, I used the wrong color. We got that through multiplication. And then we got that through addition. So, ways of getting to negative 14. Well, let's go back to our 2 and 7. The 2 is positive, the 7 is negative. Or you could do negative 2 and positive 7. Or negative 1 and positive 14. And positive 1 and negative 14. Alright, we need to add to get to negative 5. So which one of these is going to get me to negative 5? Well, it happens to be the first one in this case, so that works out. Alright, you'll notice that's positive 5, which is no good. That's 13, no good. That's negative 13, no good. Alright, your goal again is to find that as quick as possible. Alright, once again, because this has a lead coefficient of 1, I could just go right to my answer and say x plus 2 and x minus 7. I'm taking my signs and using them. Those signs are so important. You got to make sure you're including them in your chart. Okay? Now, looking at example C, you'll notice that we have extra variables in there. Okay? It's not going to change the way we attack this problem. Okay? First thing we're going to do is make our MA chart. Okay? Once again, we have negative 14. Okay? So these are all the same as before. And if you notice, I went through it already and crossed this one out. That got me to positive 13. So I already know my factors are going to be negative 1 and positive 14. Okay, and just to remind you, negative 1 times 14 is negative 14, and negative 1 plus 14 is positive 13. Alright, so the only difference is now, okay, if I were to go back to this original example I showed you and throw a y in, what would happen is the first term wouldn't change. This would pick up a y. And then this would be 2y times 3y, which becomes 6y squared. Okay, so now this problem looks just like this. Alright, and what I did, once again, was I put a y with the last number. So the x is still first, and the y is second. And actually, I think that's off your screen, so I'm going to rewrite it down below here. Okay? Remember, this shortcut that I'm showing you only happens when you have a lead coefficient of 1. I don't think I could possibly stress this point any more than this. I've underlined it 4 times. I've highlighted it. I put a box around it, and I put a bunch of exclamation points after it. Okay? The shortcut can only be used because we have a lead coefficient of 1. Alright, let's move on. Alright? Now, example 2. Alright, keep in mind, once again, that you do have multiple choice tests, and we need to understand the idea that it's multiple choice doesn't mean there's only one answer. Okay, and the directions don't have to tell you that. Alright, so when it says which of the following is a factor, it could be all of these, it could be one of them, 2 of them, or 3 of them, who knows? Alright, so let's go ahead and factor this. I need to make an MA chart. In multiplication, once again, I need to get to negative 18, and in addition, I need to get to negative 3. Alright, so negative 18 and negative 3. Alright, so lots of factors of 18. Alright, a lot of people think 2 and 9 first. Keep in mind, that 18 is negative. So one of those has to be negative, one has to be positive. Alright, that result is 7. If I switch the signs, it's just going to give me negative 7, and I don't need that. Alright, of course, 1 and 18 would work, but it doesn't get you negative 3. We're going to use 3 and 6. Okay? General rule of thumb is this sign right here always goes to your bigger factor. So I'm going to do that. Positive 3 and negative 6 will get me negative 3. Again, if I didn't know that general rule and I switched my signs, well, I would get positive 3, and then that should let me know that I should switch it. So my factored answer is x plus 3, x minus 6. So, I see x minus 6, and that's it in this particular case. Alright? Again, I have to check everything though, because once again, you may have both of your factors in that answer, and you have to select both of them then. Alright, so be really careful with those problems. Alright, last one. Alright, I know this video is going to be a little bit longer than usual, but sometimes, you can't help it with factoring. Alright, so once again, we have a student mistake. Alright, we have a problem, we have the answer, we have to describe the mistake the student is making. Okay, using complete sentences. Once again, it usually starts with you saying, okay, how did we go from here to there? Well, I'm sure this person was thinking an MA chart, alright, where we got to positive 6 and negative 5. Okay, the positive 6 means I have to have the same sign, either both positive or both negative. Positive 3 and positive 2 is positive 5. Notice that person's using positives. The problem is we need a negative 5. So they should have used negative 3 and negative 2. So describe the mistake that the student made the student picked, why is that not writing? Picked factors that equal positive 5. We need to equal negative 5. Alright? So, something to that nature. Again, it doesn't have to be word for word. Alright? But you have the idea. Alright? Now, once again, you see the you try problems. Of course, you know that's something you're going to take care of in class. Alright? Please keep in mind when you come into class. Okay? Even if you're confused, you got to try something. Okay? Don't just sit there and say, I don't get any of this. Alright? Look at what we've done. Here's the work. Okay? When you go to try example A in the you tries, okay, look at the previous work and try to mock it at least. Try to get as close as possible. And again, if you fail in the you tries, no big deal. Learn from that mistake though. Okay? But you can't learn if you're not trying. That's why we call them, ready for this? You try problems. Because you try them. You have to try them. Do some work, show some work, ask questions, alright? Don't be a lazy learner, and you will learn how to factor. Don't fall behind. See you tomorrow.